Hi everybody. Today we're gonna do some little registration, little bit of a registration method with screen printing. We did in class, we did demonstrate printing, but there was a little bit of an issue with registering because part of my elements are free floating and I didn't have a matrix to start with, so I didn't start with a drawing or a transparency. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a trick that you can use if you don't have a full drawing to start with. And even if you do have a full drawing, you might need to do this method to help get your image a little bit more exact. Sometimes when we translate our original sketches and drawings to our drawing fluid on the screen, sometimes it's not exact, and if it's not exact, then our registration might not match up exactly, and there's times when you want to do this, and so we're going to do that right now. So I just wanted to show you the difference to start with. So this is there's three different elements to this. There's the yellow of the moon or whatever this round shape is, and then there's a silver layer behind the wolf, and then there's the K screen, the black screen. And I printed the yellow first, and then I went in and printed the silver, but I did it in class, realizing that I probably wasn't going to be able to get a perfect registration because I don't know exactly where that wolf is supposed to go, because I didn't have that on the stencil that I was using. So I'm going to show you how we can fix that. And then over here I printed one without that little bit of yellow, just to show you what it would look like, if that wasn't there and there wasn't a registration issue at all. So we're gonna fix that right now, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I've got my screen backer, right? And I've got my K screen, and I just took some wax paper or contact paper. What's it called? What's the parchment paper works for this as well, like the oven paper that you find in the grocery store. That works great for this because it's pretty transparent, so you can use it as like a tracing paper, transparency paper. It's waxed, so it'll probably hold up after a print. If I wanted to save this, I probably could. And a couple alternatives here for the flop, I guess we'll call it the flop on this. This is the drawing, this is the flop, but I also use that same stuff to make a stencil for the wolf. And so this is waxed, and it should hold up after a couple of printings. You just want to be careful peeling it if it is something that you want to take, if you want to hang on to afterwards. But if it's something that you really want to hang on to, if it's not just something that you're going to throw away, you might want to use some Duralar, because this will definitely hold up. You still want to be careful that it doesn't tear when you peel it off your screen. I also have some vellum, drawing vellum. That's handy to have around too, because it's slightly transparent so you can see through it. So anyway, we're gonna get started with this, and you can see I just took my screen, I laid it down, and I just drew with a Sharpie. Now I want to be as careful as I need to be, so if there's more drawing elements in there, I might need to consider that, but I'm just doing the 3 layers, so it's not really a big deal. Okay, so we're gonna start with I actually kind of want to see what the yellow printed over the silver looks like. So why don't we print that first, and might need a screen for that one. Okay, so I grabbed a screen. It's not the best screen, but it's it'll do in a pinch, and it's just a small section that I need anyway. So we're gonna use this, and then I might throw this one away. We're not sure. So what I want to do is take my screen. I'm not even gonna bother to tape this off. I'm only gonna pull a few prints, so I don't really need to tape this off. It's a small section in the screen, so I'm not gonna worry too much about it. So I need this to go like that. To make sure that I have this going the right way. I'm gonna turn it over here, and I might use a little bit of tape just to keep it in place. On the screen. And because this is just a really small section, I don't really need much tape, and I'm not going to bother taping this off. I'm going to grab a couple squeegees. We'll use an 8, and then I'll need use a 10, and we'll take a 12. I think that'll be plenty. So I'm going to go through this rather quickly because I am kind of short on time. Seems like I'm always short on time, so we got stuff to do. I'll line this up. So last time I did my yellow layer first, but I'm gonna start with this one. And I'll take a piece of paper. So I'm gonna take my flop, and for this I don't need to do anything special. I'm just gonna kind of line it up here where I like it. Line it up on my paper. So I'm just eyeballing this. You know, this paper is kind of smaller than the paper I was using before, but that's all right. It's you know, this isn't really a design that's meant to be printed on paper. It's more of like a t-shirt type design. You know, I'm not really gonna do anything with this afterwards. And I don't need this to be perfect right now. I just want it to be pretty close. And that's good enough. Like, I just want to kind of align my paper right now. Bring it down a little bit. And I'll show you a little bit more of a trick after on the next layer. Okay, good enough. So I don't really need this yet. I'm gonna need it once I print my next layer. But I just wanted to center because it's a pretty big design for this piece of paper. Okay, so I'm gonna need 2 of these pieces of cut plastic. And you know, we have lots of this. It's just, you know, different sizes. And you can use different types of tape. I'm just gonna use what I have here, some artist tape. And you can see I'm just gonna go right up to that line, pretty close to the edge, not over the edge though. And I wanna do this without moving my paper. So that's the main thing. I don't wanna shift the paper. Get those on there. And then I kind of, sometimes I'll put my arm down, or else I'll take the paper, the tear bar, and lay the tear bar over top of this. That works well too. And then, so that one's lined up, and then I'm just gonna line this one up. I usually use like the top left and the left side of the paper. So I usually do these registration marks. This is called butt registration. I usually use the top left, and once I choose that point, I don't want to change it, so I want to keep consistent throughout the printing. So next time if I do it over here, my registration might be off, because I know that this corner of each piece of paper that I use is going to be the same, so I'm going to do it up here. If I want to tear my paper, if the edges aren't very sharp, you know, this is a more of a machined edge on the paper, so I can get it pretty precise doing that. But if I have a really deckled edge on my paper, you know, I might want to consider putting a sharper edge on it with a razor blade or a paper cutter. But if my registration can be kind of loose, then I don't have to worry about it too much. And this, we can afford a little bit of looseness with this. And I'm just gonna double check. So I'm looking through here, and I just wanna make sure that the design doesn't go off the top of the page. Good. Let's set this aside. And my first color, let's see, we're gonna do some silver again. And so I didn't tape off any of this screen, so I'm only going to be printing this little section. So I just want to be careful that I don't get ink way up here or pull down here or on the sides. This is going to be a pretty quick layer to print. So this must be a new can. Let's see if I've got an old one. Here we go. And I'm just going to cover all the way to the left, all the way to the right. I don't need much. I'm only pulling a couple prints, like maybe 3 prints for time. Dab this. I'm not even going to do a flood pass. Okay. Then I can take this. And why don't we just do we'll just do 3 prints. And I think for time's sake also, I'm not even going to bother cleaning my screens until the end. But I hope you all realize that I will be cleaning my screens at the end. There's 2. But I would never recommend you waiting to clean your screens. There's 3. Okay. Now, we're gonna do a little cleanup here pretty quick. Let's get some tape or another can here, because I need this one back. Take a little card. Save the ink from my squeegee. There. Not much of a mess. Keep it real simple. And we can move right into the next color. Okay, so let's get this off. And I'll give this a quick spray, let it I'm just going to tear this off. I don't really care if I keep this. You know, it only took me about 2 minutes to cut it. That ink is came off pretty quickly too, so. Okay, so, you know, that one's actually pretty clean. Got a little bit there. Yeah, actually that's clean, so that was easy. No fuss. Okay, so we're gonna switch to the next layer. Let's see. It's probably, this one's not gonna be big enough for this next step. Okay. I'm gonna take these registration marks off. And I'm gonna get the next screen. Make sure that these are tight enough where, you know, when I'm doing a push or a pull with my squeegee, that it's not going to shift. So give that a little tug, make sure it's on there tight. And then now I need my, I'm going to move these. Now I need my flop. Okay. And what I'm going to do is register my flop to my screen. And I'm just lining up that yellow section. Okay. And another thing I can do, because this is just a circle, I can take that first layer and maybe I'll even tape my flop to that. Okay, so I've got this lined up pretty good. Take a little tape, line that up to there. And sometimes if you have a little bit of trouble maneuvering your screen, take a little cardstock, add a little strip of tape, and just to the bottom of your print, now I can move this around underneath my screen by just lifting a little bit, because my hand, you know, it's hard to reach under there and maneuver this, but with that, now I have much more control. So let's see here. Let's see, so there is, so I'm just looking for the little outline, and that's all I need. And this wasn't intended to be perfect, you know, when I did that whole section, that was meant to have layers kind of poking through. So that yellow is kind of going to be poking throughout. Okay, so I'm happy with that. So now, again, I just don't want to shift my paper. You know, and ideally your prints have a little bit more time to dry than this. So I don't want to shift this. Just take my flop, once again move that back, take my registration guides here, just kind of put some pressure on the paper so it doesn't shift. There's one. And there's two. So you can get some really, really intricate registration just using this. It's really basic, but it does the job. Peel that off the paper. I'll set this aside because I'm going to use that again. But now I'm ready to print. And I'm printing in yellow. Actually, I've got some yellow from earlier. I'll use this up. It got a little bit of contamination with some of the screen filler, but that's all right. We use these containers. There's always some up on the wall or on the shelf there. And this screen is all taped up from last time. I don't have to do any taping. It's all taped up, and that should be in the video. And I usually don't do a flood pass on my first pass, but you know, let's get this ink ready. 2 hands, spread my fingers. And I give it a little jolt like that. That kind of releases the ink. A little bit of pressure, not a ton, but I've been doing 2 with this. Okay. And then you can set your squeegee up here, or you can set it to the side. We're just doing a couple prints, so it's not a big deal. These are sticking to the screen but we can hook this up to a vacuum and have the vacuum, there's a little unit underneath that, and that would keep the paper from sticking to the screen. Another method too, if you're using one of the boards in the back there that have the screen hinges on them, the screen clamp hinges, another thing you can do is just take some spray starch, like shirt starch that we use, and we've got some next door. I just got to bring it over and spray the baseboard with that, and that'll help make the paper stick. Sometimes it can have some strange things, like a little bit of an odd look to the ink, especially like this yellow ink. It looks kind of bubbly when we're printing like this. So you can see it's kind of bubbly, but it'll dry flat. And just as an example, if you get up close, you can see it dries fine. But when you first take that print, it's a little bit bubbly. It's kind of weird. Seems to do that mostly with yellow ink. Yeah. So I'm just putting my paper in, you know, right up against those edges. A little bit of a jolt. There's not really much ink left in this anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. So that was the last print in yellow. Set this aside, and again, just take that card, get as much as I can off. So my students know this is contaminated. I did mention it, but what you might want to get into the habit of doing, if you're like using inks and you might want to save them, or if there's enough to save and somebody else might need it to modify a color or something like that, just put your name on it on the cup with Sharpie, and if you modified the ink at all, let us know. So if I had maybe added some transparent base to it, or you know, or if the ink is not one of the fabric inks, let us know, because you know, we don't want to modify we don't want to add transparency base to fabric ink. So it's fine with these inks if you're doing posters, but with fabric, you know, we don't want to add transparency and not know it because it might affect the way that it cures. Just give this a little knock if it sticks. A little bit of soap. Okay, so I'm gonna be done with this one. I'll show you how to use screen filler. That might take a little bit. I'm not gonna do that today, but I will show you how to remove the screen filler in the next video. Okay, let's see. I might just use the same. Oh, that's not gonna cut it. I'll clean these after. There's 2 down. So we're on to our last screen. Tighten that up. Okay. Let's grab. We don't actually even really need this print right now. I take my flop and again put that underneath. And I'm gonna line this up. So I'm lining up my flop. And I can kind of press down on the mesh to see. That looks good. See, sometimes you have to kind of rotate it, right? So the text looks good. So like if text looks good here, but it might not be accurate up here. So sometimes you have to kind of rotate around, but that is fine. That's more than good. Okay, so I'm gonna take a little piece of tape. Tape my flop. Steal another piece of tape off of this. Because I don't want this flop to shift now. I want that to stay right where it is. Now I can bring this up. I'm going to remove my registration marks. So you can see now why they call it a flop. And I would use this if I'm doing my t-shirts too, because I could register each color to the t-shirt. I might need to tape it further over here. And what I would do is line it up, put a shirt underneath this with the board in between the layers of the shirt. I would line up my flop with this on top of my t-shirt, and then I would take this off and I'd be ready to go. Okay, but for now we're gonna leave that. Take my print and line it up with my flop. That ink is still a little tacky, but that's all right. Just needs to come over a tiny bit. Yeah, so ideally, you know, I'd be printing more and, you know, my ink wouldn't be wet still. Okay. If I needed to as well, I can attach it to this, move it around. So again, trying not to shift my paper. There we go. So now I've got my registration. This is all taped off as well. I don't have to do much. Get some black on there. Maybe spread it out a little bit more, but I think we'll be fine. We'll do 2. Okay, and I'm going to take this down. That yellow is what's making it stick. Now, flood passes. We talked about flood passes in school, in the classroom, but I don't want to leave my screen up like this. Right before if I peel off my print, if I have to peel off my print, peel it off, and then lightly flood the screen with ink. So I'm not pushing. I want some ink to get into the mesh, and there we go. So this is kind of nice. We'll look at those in just a minute. So that flood pass is going to prevent the ink that was in the mesh from drying out, you know, in between while I'm moving my prints around. And everybody should be taking note of the angle. You know, I'm just flooding. Now, some people like to do their pressure with a push instead of a pull. So I pull, but there's some times when registration might be a little bit funky and you need to do a push pass, just for stretching of the screen, that kind of stuff. But, you know, for the most part, just be aware. Okay, so again, I'm doing a flood pass. No pressure. That looks good. We got one more here. Okay. And I've been getting into the habit of doing this, like putting both the squeegee and lifting with one hand, and that way I'm ready to flood. So I usually always flood back up. I actually didn't need to flood that one because I'm done, you know, but it's good to see it. Okay, so let's take a little look here and let's compare. So these ones are, you know, clearly more registered accurately, and I wanted to show you one little thing. So I printed the yellow first on this one, and then the silver next, and then the black. But you can't really see, the silver is more opaque than the yellow, so there's no interaction with them. This time I printed the silver first and the yellow on top, because I wanted some of this patterning of the yellow to come through on top of it. And so you can see the yellow is opaque, and it just kind of changes the tone a little bit. I get to see some of that movement behind there. And so, you know, I did that intentionally just to see how this would look with that. So, you know, changing up the order in which you print your screens can lead to some interesting effects, right? And of course, like, this is registered fine, you know, whereas I don't have that misregistration anymore. So we're pretty good to go. I'm happy with that. We're gonna, in class, we'll probably talk a little bit more about how to do the flop registration with t-shirts. I know a lot of students are gonna have some, you know, unique problems with all of their shirts. We're all doing different kind of things, and everybody's got different types of design. So we're gonna do some problem solving in class with that. And I'll do another video for screen filler removal, because that's a pain in the butt, and I want to make sure that everybody can do it properly and not just kind of give up and run away from it. Okay, so thanks again, and we'll see you soon.